All right, guys, here we are. One more Shanti Talks. This one super special because it's almost something that I would like to share with the world. Um, athletes or just people that want to have quality of life. All right, and of course we're gonna go to a whole conversation. I also have questions and why I've chosen the professions that I have. Okay, I'm here with Dr. Joe Ham from Hoot HRT.
Yes.
All right, brother.
Yeah, man.
Cool. So, like I always start my conversations, almost like I'm re-interviewing to talk about our friendship and how we get connected because I think it's important so
Yes.
people to know. So Joe, his family has been training with us since the San Diego times and everything else. So let's start from the beginning. All right, Joe. So let's go to the jiu-jitsu part first. So how did you found out about us in San Diego?
Oh, that's easy. So I was in the Navy for about 29 years, and I was with 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines out of Hawaii, and we were in Okinawa training.
What year is that?
That was back in 2012,
12.
2013. That's
Mm-hmm.
correct. And I was a big CrossFitter. Did a lot of working out. Always very active. And every night I would work out. I'd walk by this gym. I was in the gym as a mat room, and I'd see some people do jujitsu, and they're much smaller than me. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go in there one day. I'm just gonna go clean them up, and
Because you're strong.
because I was really strong. I was extremely strong, and I went in there one night, and I just got the balls to go in and say, hey, I'm gonna try a class. And Professor De Silva said, yeah, come on in. And I was just in some shorts and a regular old t-shirt, and within like just a few minutes of being on the ground, I was like, why is my arm going out here? Why am I getting choked? Why can I not bench press my way out of this? Why can I not, front squat or pull up out of this? And I was 40 years old at the time, and everything I thought in life that I thought I could fight was a lie. And then my buddy said, "Hey, since you're doing jujitsu, let me show you these videos from Salo, your brother,
Oh,
the
okay.
Jiu-Jitsu Evolution, I believe it
Okay.
was."
Wow.
And I started watching some of those, and things made a little more sense. And it just it I became a little more, I wouldn't say advanced by any means whatsoever, but I picked up things really quickly. And then I was stationed in San Diego. I went from Okinawa to Hawaii back to San Diego, and I went into the university, and that's when I met Salo for the very first time. And started to get trained there. And then every once in a while you were always jet setting, so then you
Mm,
would show up every once in a while and then go back, and then we kind of met that way back in
okay.
2015, 2015, I believe it was. That's right.
Yeah, and the whole family was training.
That's correct.
He and his wife and three beautiful kids. Like the first Blade family, and I was
Yes.
really happy. We still have a big bond as a family. So, as you just mentioned, you're stationed in Okinawa, and then you went to San Diego, right? And
Yeah.
that's I think when this whole story with with your medic, right? With your medicine and how you like the health and how did that create. Can you tell us a little bit like what was the role in when you were stationed, like EMT? I don't know, like just
Oh,
go through your process to the study
oh,
in that
gotcha.
field.
Sure. So I mean, all starts in the first year in the Navy. I went to hospital corps school, so I was like a medic that would just kind of work on the hospital floor. And I was on a ship, so I was helping out like the ship's dock, which was an independent duty corpsman, and I would kind of do battle dressings and help sick call. Then I went to surgical tech school, and then I went to ophthalmology. Then I went to surface force independent duty school, where I was pretty much independent for the most part. Did a little bit of stuff with NSW, and then I went to PA school in San Antonio. Finished up PA school in 2010, 2012 total, and went to Hawaii. Came back and did an ER fellowship, and then that's where that all kind of started. So I went a lot of schooling to do what I'm doing now.
Okay, so how because we're gonna go straight into, like I said, I have a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I have always praised about jiu-jitsu is longevity,
Yeah.
right? Like, and of course, in the world today, in a society of today, we see a lot of. We're gonna, kind of tune into more technicality also on that a little bit, and a little bit of, Joe's vision of, how to stay healthy, and so forth, and his services. We see so many people just having like heart attacks or like I've had a case one of my best friend like vegan, super healthy high lifestyle and everything else. So before we kind of get to that, how, because I always believe this, right? Like sometimes we say, like doctors, like we have obese doctors, we have doctors that like they don't live the lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
They don't do what they preach. So like I don't think this whole thing like do as I say but don't do as I do is a real thing.
Yeah.
Because I think we should always lead, for example, by example, right? So, um, you know, of course, I follow a lot. You're moving, you're stressed. You know, I remember many times you'll be away from your family, and I think all the environment it does help you end up, you know, jeopardize your health, right?
Mhm.
And I think those things does help you, especially the way you communicate with me and everything else. So, how did that started? Like, how do you feel like, man, I have all this knowledge and I'm feeling there's something that I need to change, not just in my hormones or my lifestyle, but like, how did that caring? Because, like I said, I feel you very caring, and I think that's I'll never let anyone, you know, tell me what to do with my body if I don't trust. It's not
Yeah.
about the friendship; it's about the trust and the caring and love.
Sure.
So, how does that started for you?
Oh, well, well, there's a two prong on this, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to start with the very beginning of my own hormone issues that I had. So on deployment, coming back out of Okinawa before I came, the second time I came back to the university, I started there in university, went back to Okinawa, and then came back. I had something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which it's an autoimmune condition that attacks your thyroid, pretty much kills it because your body's trying to attack it and kills it, which leads to a lot of other issues that led to low testosterone, low libido, anxiety, depression, low energy, fatigue, brain fog. Like it led to a lot of things. Eventually got that under control through endocrinology, and pretty much went back on testosterone replacement therapy, which made a pretty big difference in my life. So that's the first thing. The second thing is because I work in emergency medicine and I see the tail end of you know people not taking care of themselves, or eating terribly, or having poor genetics, or poor outcomes, or just poor opportunities, develop chronic diseases, and then it manifests into this chronic disease becoming unmanageable through primary care or through the things that you do. So I see in the emergency department, hey, this could have been you know controlled or abated, or at least decreased if we'd have went back maybe 10 to 15 years, made sure that you weren't going through metabolic syndrome, your hormones were not where they're were optimized, or were not low. And then just telling people about, hey, don't smoke, don't drink, don't eat a lot of junk in your middle age, because that's where the damage is starting to be done. So, being a hormone replacement patient, times two, being the thyroid being an issue, as well as like testosterone being low, and then having the knowledge of, hey, this is going to be your life down the road, as cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in America, and it stems from sometimes, inflammation, poor diet, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, eating terribly, smoking cigarettes, and then there's also the genetic factor too.
Mm-hmm.
So just knowing those things made me want to help people, not only in the tail end of their life, when they're in my emergency department with a stroke or a heart attack, or some sort of diabetic related problem. I wanted to go to the beginning and help people there. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
let's do it here, so you don't have to have this catastrophe down the road, and then we're just playing like 10 to 15 years of catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So because I had those two things in mind, I wanted to be much smarter about hormone optimization. I just didn't want to just dish out hormones to people. I didn't want to just throw hormones at people for no reason at all. So my business partner, or my medical director, my partner himself, Dr. John Cash, and I went through a very extensive hormone replacement training, to where we could treat not just men. Men are very simple, but also women, and we could deal with stress issues such as cortisol, thyroid issues, hormone issues, as far as like perimenopause, menopause, and andropause for men. Which, if you have these things in order when you're in your mid 30s and 40s, you can literally glide into life. Would you say longevity?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about longevity here soon, I'm sure. You can glide into life a little bit easier, a little bit better. And I found that sometimes talking to your regular doctor, like at your regular primary care or something like that, sometimes they really don't want to mess with the hormone picture because it's extremely extensive.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a primary care practice, You don't have a lot of time, and sometimes the insurance is not going to pay for it. You don't have a lot of time to see them on initial consultation, which is about half hour. Then every single visit that you're doing labs on, and make sure you're getting these numbers correctly, and see how their health is going.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a big deal. So we got certified in that, and then we wanted to go forward and actually help people, and that's where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really want to harp on one thing on our practice too, is we're not a testosterone mill, right? So I'm not looking for huge amounts of numbers of patients. I'm not looking for the quick buck. I'm not looking to turn people in and out the door really fast. I'm literally going to take a very large snapshot of your hormone health, your metabolic health, as well as how well you sleep, how much alcohol do you intake, what is any tobacco products, illicit drug use. Your family history is a big one, because we'll talk about that here soon too. As I look at the overall picture, why are your hormones low?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you having these numbers that are off? And a lot of times we try to just fix that problem before we place you on medications.
Yeah.
Not really great for business, but what I want to do is I want to do what's right for the patient. I want to do what's right for that patient at that time. So
yeah, like especially because we see today, especially if you look at even the campaigns, how our even the medical field, it's all about profit, right? Let's keep let's keep people sick so we can do this ball game, and when he talks about like hormones, it's not like he's just gonna put you like because like just let's give you testosterone and you'll be good. No, right? It's like we overloading someone with something they're not ready to, right? So when I looked into, because I have never done any, I don't even take supplements, and he was looking at me like, what the fuck are you doing? But of course I think my life was pretty balanced and everything else, but I have always had an issue. So let's start with me a little bit, and so we can like kind of guide people that's looking for it. So I have had cholesterol issues for a very long time. I have high cholesterol, also as you guys know me, chocolate addiction, but of course I do balance that with a lot of training, but also I believe that even it stresses your body out, right? Like the inflammation, now your body has to work. Okay, you're pretty healthy here because you're messing up here, but now there's like, why do I have to work that hard for this to be balanced, So like I said, I have no problem in sharing my thing, but there's a couple things that I think the science has found out, and like I said, there's a lot of funny names, so I want you guys to be focused on it. And then of course, if I don't know about the whole medical, but I don't mind talking about my situation. And that's one of the reasons I started running. I did a marathon. I like I said, I like to live life. I drink alcohol and things like this. Of course I'm a martial artist, but I live life, right? And he always say, hey, he's not telling me, hey, you should be out of it, right? Because there's the component that I found out about myself, that one is genetic and the other one is lifestyle.
Correct.
Right? Of course, my lifestyle, I eat well. Like I said, I have things that are unbalanced, but there's some things within my DNA that I think a lot of people that I'm 44 years old. It's the first time I'm actually having someone looking into my things, all the time. Like my numbers were very good 6 months ago. I messed up a little bit. My numbers were off again. So can you explain, in a very elementary way,
Sure.
the difference, especially let's talk about cholesterol for now.
Sure.
All right. About the genetic and the lifestyle, like how does that work? Because we're explaining over lunch today, the two different proteins, because everybody talks about cholesterol. Cholesterol is bad. Cholesterol is bad. But within my dumb understanding, cholesterol is bad, but not as bad as. So let's try
Correct.
to clear that.
Yeah. So cholesterol is one part of the cardiovascular issues. So one, if I can speak freely about your stuff, like, you came to me and wanted to overall, look at your health. Well, your testosterone does not need to be touched whatsoever. So we can get that out of the way. So you're not on any sort of replacement therapy. However, I was like, well, let's dive into, wow, your cholesterol is really high. So so instead of saying, hey, your cholesterol is high, let's find out what cholesterol is high. So LDL is one, HDL is another, VLDL, as well as your triglycerides. So I was like, well, any family history? No, not terrible. So I said, well, let's just make sure that we're not, looking down at something we need to get a hold of a little bit aggressively. So we did a lipoprotein little a, and that's a genetic particle basically that you're not going to be able to out jiu-jitsu, out train, out
So how do you call it?
So it's called lipoprotein little a.
Little a.
Little
so
a.
that one, that's what I found out. That's something that you're born with. You have to find a way to, thanks to science, you have to find a way to manage that. Okay.
And unfortunately, right now, there's not very many ways to diminish that. It's just genetic. And then the second part that you have, it's also equally as bad, as you have something called lipoprotein B, which is a much stickier and much more concerning LDL particle that can be a little bit stickier in the arteries, right? So, but your HDL, which is your high density lipoprotein, which actually kind of helps carry this back to liver and kind of get processed out, is also high. So your HDL LDL ratio is in a good point.
So my bad is high, but my good is high.
That's correct.
Okay. So what makes my bad cholesterol, my good cholesterol high, and what makes my bad cholesterol high?
Perfect answer. I give you a great answer. One, your mats over here make your HDL really good.
Okay.
You know, your good fats you eat, like avocados and olive oils and stuff like that, kind of help out with some of your HDL. And your LDL is high because your body wants to make LDL. Sometimes you eat certain foods that create your LDL to be a little bit higher.
What's the number one food that makes that?
Well, they'll tell you like steak, eggs, and things like that. They'll do that, but alcohol definitely does not help out with this at all whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And just sometimes your liver wants to kick that out. Like I have familiar hyperlipidemia. I don't eat any trash. I barely drink. Well, now I don't barely drink any alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes. My cholesterol is routinely over 200 all the time. Mm-hmm. And my lipoprotein B is a little elevated. So I'm on cholesterol medications. I'm on Crestor, and I'm also on Zetia. So Zetia is a medication. Well, I mean, we can get into the whole how these all work, but one controls how much my liver makes, and then one controls how much I reabsorb through my diet. So I keep my cholesterol a little bit low, as I don't want this to pile up in my arteries and my coronaries to choke my heart off later on. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to be worried about with you as an athlete. Your testosterone is where it needs to be. Almost every other single one of your labs is right where it needs to be, but your cholesterol is high, even though you're extremely active and don't eat a bunch of terrible foods. So we're going to be helping with your primary care manager to kind of manage both your HDL as well as your lipoprotein B.
Okay, so of course there's a lot. You have mentioned liver, like liver function, right? Because I think everything we do goes through the liver, right?
It's a good filter, and it also helps you burn fat, makes cholesterol, does a lot of stuff for you.
Again, like what I want to like even clarify is like everything you do, like your cholesterol, your stress, what you eat, your liver has to manage that in a way, right? Yeah. I think the liver is the general manager.
You got to take care of that thing. You don't want to ever.
Because like even like you go on a medication and you want to like, because now we're talking about, let's say your cholesterol high and then you're dealing with that, and now maybe some bad malpractice person just goes in and shoots a shitload of testosterone on you. Now your liver is like, what am I doing, right?
Right. So yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. But I mean, I don't think, hopefully no doctor or facility or practitioner would ever look at really awkward labs to go, I think testosterone is the way to go. I hope they never do that.
So does cholesterol, or let's try to make, connection. Does cholesterol, what the role of cholesterol in hormonal, is there any?
It's basically the start of your hormones, your sex hormones. It's the very top of the sterogenesis pathway.
The cholesterol. Mm-hmm. So what does cholesterol? Because also my dumb understanding, of course, this is. I remember when I look at my because now that's gonna go to another one that's my curiosity, right? So I remember one time I did a test and my cholesterol was not cholesterol, my testosterone was in a good level, and then went really good, and then of course I went to 6 months on not eating and then went back lower a little. But anyway, I look at sex binding hormone, yes, and it was super high. I'm like, yeah, that's super high, but like,
not good.
But I don't feel different, right? Which is a very deceiving name for a. Anyway, I'm just being funny right now because you look at sex binding hormone, like, yeah, it's high. It should be high, right? Because it's my libido. That was my first dumb assumption about it.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So does my high cholesterol has anything to do with the sex binding hormone, or there's nothing to
I
do
don't
with it?
believe it has anything to do with that at all, which is also made by the liver too.
So made by liver.
Yeah, sex binding hormone.
So there is total testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
free testosterone,
Correct.
and sex binding hormone, right?
Yeah.
Those are like
So globulin. So
globulin.
sex hormone binding globulin is a protein that will actually bind it to testosterone and not make it freely available. So if it's high, you have a testosterone of 1,000, and you have a sex hormone binding globulin that's extremely high. That 1,000 just got a good amount of it just got gobbled up by this protein. So you only have this free testosterone.
But
So
why do
like
you do that?
there's a whole litany of reasons why that is. One, it could be age, it could be your diet, it could just be the way your liver is. So there's ways that we can kind of decrease that, and we're gonna be working on that.
Okay. But like as far as the process, right? Because like I remember like when people say, "Oh, take vitamin C," but if you don't take another vitamin, so there's always like which again, for me, I think medicine is fantastic. There's always those vitamins or whatever that they work together,
Correct.
right, to be more optimized. So why does sex bind hormone globulin?
Globulin, yes.
Globulin. I just like the word sex binding. Why it does that? You know what I mean? Why this guy is right over there? Oh, let's go. Let's get this testosterone and make this guy don't get a hard on.
That's just the way your body wants to make it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things you can do to decrease that. One is magnesium. Everyone should probably be taking at least 500 milligrams of magnesium every night. It all depends on which one you use it for, and that kind of helps decrease your sex hormone binding globulin. Boron also does that, kind of decreases it, and also zinc. So those are the three things that I ask you to take to bring yours down a little bit, so you can actually free more of your testosterone up.
So magnesium, that's what I found out about magnesium, right? Let's talk about magnesium a little bit, because I think for us, for athletes, is very important, right?
Extremely.
I did a whoop, right? I used the whoop, and I was looking at my RAM. My RAM is super high. I'm like, oh, I'm doing really good, but my deep sleep is very bad, right? And I'm a caffeine addicted as well, which now I don't do mochas anymore, even though I was gifted a mocha today.
Yes.
So they say like for as much caffeine you take, you should like match that with magnesium. So what type of magnesium does what? Right, the citrate.
Citrate is something you want to take to go to the bathroom.
Bathroom?
Yeah, so magnesium citrate is actually sort of a laxative.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can take a little magnesium, glycinate, which is one that kind of helps calm the nerves and actually helps you to sleep a little bit better.
So glycinate.
Yes.
So guys, let's get the glycinate.
Yeah, magnesium glycinate.
So does that, like, you say like just in general we should take 500 milligrams?
Yeah, I mean that's a safe. You don't want to overload on magnesium or anything like that whatsoever. Yeah, you definitely, as an athlete, and as just folks in general, because it's involved in like well over 300 processes within the body, like enzymatic. It's needed all over the place, especially for cardiac function, as well as like muscle function, brain. It's really important to take. And we don't even test for it because it's like most people are not exactly severely deficient in it, because you can get it from certain foods, but what people are eating nowadays is not really considered food. So I mean, I just say, hey, it's probably just safe. And vitamin D is the same way. Most people don't go out in the sun anymore. They're just stuck in offices. They're not doing anything. So they're not really, synthesizing vitamin D. We really don't test for vitamin D too much unless I'm really looking for, hey, I'm having a problem figuring out why this person's, testosterone is really low, or if I'm looking for a different sort of disease, we just assume already you're deficient magnesium and vitamin D.
Yeah.
Typically we do.
Yeah, one thing that really, like I said, when you start to go the rabbit hole about what they're doing to us, right? Food is not food. Food is not alive anymore, right?
No.
And then like I said, throughout my whole career, I had seasons of taking supplementations, and since I've been working with Joe, I've been as disciplined as I can possibly be. I have always carried my little package there. So let's talk about the food industry, right? So now, like I said, I was a very big like naturalist, right? There's a lot of people like, oh, I don't necessarily need supplementation, right? But like I said, we're living in a world now where the food does not give us that. Like maybe like 50 years ago, we weren't as active. There was no so much pollution, so our body didn't have to fight that hard. No. So are you a believer that regardless of hormones, because everybody just gets worried about hormone. I'm just more worried about my body functioning in a level to withstand my life, to be prepared to maybe, I'm 44, eventually I'll get into a thing. So do you think that nowadays everyone should look into, at least in a very elementary level, to look into supplementation, because food will not give you that?
I absolutely do.
Mm.
One, I just live a very simple, just a simple saying, like if it comes out of a bag, I don't really want to eat it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's fast, I don't want to eat it because it's ultra processed. It gets into the stomach. Yeah, it'll fill your stomach up.
Liver.
It basically, it will choke off your liver. I mean, it's not if you can get away from. I mean, maybe I will say this. I will make an exception. I think Chipotle is probably a food you could probably eat out of a bag, because that's pretty much fresh.
Mhm.
Pretty much. But if it's McDonald's or anything like that at all, it's all ultra processed. It's not anything that your body really, it'll use it, but it's not really used well. It's kind of like putting a very low tier gasoline into like a Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't imagine you being the way that you are if you were, at Hardee's or Carl's Jr. And not to say anything bad about it, but like if you were eating that all the time, you would not be doing what you're doing.
No,
You can't.
No, yeah.
The body just will not allow you to do that.
Yeah.
And then, with all and I'm not a big expert on endocrine disruptors and BPAs and things like that, but our surroundings now and the things we place on our body, the scents we have in our home with all these phthalates and things that they do disrupt our endocrine process, which is leading to sometimes these, altered hormone levels and things like that. Do we test for them? No, there's no real test for that. I don't really tell my patients get rid of all your scents in your home and, use aluminum-free, deodorants. I really don't get into that too much. I just kind of get into what types of food they're eating, when they're eating, especially like before bed or stuff like that, or what are you doing to break your fast in the morning? I don't get very TikTok influencer telling you to drink salt in the morning and all these aminos and stuff like that. I just, hey, what are you eating? What do you put in your body? How do you move it? And how are you recovering it? Because that's huge. If you're doing nothing with your body and you're always in recovery mode, then you're just going to probably, your body's not going to work the way it should. Like we were hunters, that's the way we were. Now there's a freeway right in front of here and everyone's in a hurry to get their kids at baseball games, and they're not shooting, they're hunting, they're not running around from people. So I mean, it's just, I think people should take a great multivitamin, absolutely, because they're probably not getting from food. If you are going to try to get your nutrients from food, I mean, I'm not going to tell you organic or not organic, but I mean, if you like pesticide, go ahead and get the stuff that's not organic, but try single source foods, like eat a steak with a thing of rice, or eat a steak with a potato, not potato loaded with a bunch of cheese. You know what I mean? Like you're eating single source things. There's not a lot of preservatives. You just cooked it. It's right there in front of you. And then, the thing that I learned that I didn't know, and this is just a side note, and we'll get to your next question, but I had no idea that artificial sweeteners actually still stimulate your insulin. And we'll talk about how we gain weight and stuff like that later on, but it's all hormonally driven by insulin. So, and when you drink a Diet Coke, you think, well, I'm just going to bring that many calories, or, these artificial sweeteners, like it won't be that bad. No, your insulin still goes up, and all the other food you take in still gets stored as
we're gonna talk about that, because I'm a big stress type of person, and we're gonna get there. So we did the cholesterol. We kind of, but the question that I wanted to make, like as far as the sex buying hormone, because you always ask me, how's your sleep, how's your rest, and I think we're gonna tap into a little bit stress versus rest. So, do you think my sex buying hormone is high because I'm doing too much and not resting enough? Is that a big factor?
Actually, exercise is another good reason to bring that down. So no.
So do you think maybe I should sleep more, like the recovery part?
I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. No. It's going to be a supplementation sort of issue to kind of bring that down naturally.
All right. Now let's talk about vitamin D. No, and then we talk about the stuff. So vitamin D, right? It's a big, I think like it's a big component to a lot. Right? Can you, because we talk about, because with the sun, people are under the sun, of course, affects your mood, it affects your stress. People even, I've heard, can you like say it's not a vitamin, it's actually vitamin D,
it's
is
a hormone. Yeah, it's pretty much, it acts like a great regulator of hormones.
Okay.
So when I have a person come in, so say like just for instance, I have a 35-year-old male coming to me, and he's athletic, or he works out a little bit, and this person doesn't eat a lot of terrible stuff. one thing that's the person that I look at and go, okay, I need to check your vitamin D level. This is the person I want to check his vitamin D level, his DHEA. I want to look at all the precursors to get in the steroidogenesis pathway. Like what is the clot? What is the problem? Why are you not able to make, this hormone? Is it what is your brain telling your testicles to do? So I look at that as well. Like I'm looking at the overall picture, why you're not making these things. And sometimes we'll find that DHEA is one, and also because that's adrenal, that could be overload, overstress. Eventually those just begin to fatigue, if you will, and then vitamin D deficiency and stuff like that. So we'll supplement those things, get his adrenals in order, and then retest in 6 to 8 weeks, or we may actually put him on a medication to stimulate a testicular manufacture, if you will, of testosterone for a couple, and get him back into a workout period, get him back into sleeping well, get him into some supplementation, and pull him off within like 2 to 3 months to see if that person can still kind of make their own on their own. So again, like I was saying earlier, we try not to put people directly onto testosterone. We try to figure out a reason why, kind of work that problem like a Rubik's Cube or whatnot, and get them back into their optimal health without placing them on testosterone.
Well, which brings us to my last question before the last question. Sugar, right? I have never been a fan of sweetener, right? Because I'm like, so am I gonna eat a fake thing? I would rather eat sugar, right? Like
Right.
for what's worth, right?
If you could.
Yeah, like if I could diminish, of course. But now it goes back to the whole thing about food, right? Why is fake food? Why do I eat a steak and I look at the thing, the steak is made out of like 55 ingredients, you know? So you're talking about how insulin spikes it, okay? How much is an actual, and it goes back to where I'm gonna, kind of building the questions, because I'm big in stress. I'm a big believer that stress, even the one you put on yourself, and we can tap into this, helps with you. So you say that sweetener spikes insulin is because of the taste, is because of your brain thinks it is, or
No,
just because your body it's just basically a body thing?
The body recognizes it as almost like a sugar still.
So it still recognizes a sugar, it still gets your insulin up.
Correct.
So what the insulin does, right? Because then it's like of course diabetes, now we kind of tap into this, I like my daughter's grandmother, is a diabetic and things like this. So how does that process, like if you don't know how sugar and insulin works, so because like you eat carbs, right, spikes your insulin, right? So why the body spikes the insulin?
One, it needs to get that blood sugar out of the vascular system. That's not where it belongs. We need to have a mechanism to get energy, sugar, into the cells to ATP process to make energy, right? So insulin is a way that we do that. If you're constantly bombarding the body with sugar, high fructose corn syrup, refined starches, sugars, processed foods, your insulin just stays high. Like you just turn the stereo up really loud. Eventually you'll go deaf, right? So the same thing with your insulin receptors. If you're having this constant bombarding of insulin to the body, the cells will eventually become resistant to that signal. Like, sorry, man, I can't do anything about this. The key no longer fits in the lock. It doesn't open up, and it goes into the cell. It just doesn't do that at all. So that's where you start to get something called insulin resistant. We go into type 2 diabetes, right? And this is where you don't want to be ever. Like I'm as an emergency medicine professional, if you can do anything in the world, please do not get diabetes. You want to stay as far away from diabetes as possible. It leads to a lot of problems. It leads to vascular issues. It leads to hypertension, which then causes the shear forcing into your arteries as well as your blood vessels. That's where your cholesterol then starts to move in, make plaques, and then will also go into it raises your lipids, which then just increases your cardiovascular risk like a lot. So you don't want to do that whatsoever. So cutting back, and again, I'm definitely a brownie monster. Every once in a while, I'll take a brownie and eat it. I love sugar every once in a while. I don't like to overindulge in sugar.
It's happiness. Happiness is also good, important.
For sure. I mean, there is great. So like when you're stressed and stuff like that, some people do get a dopamine rush from eating sugar. Some people do get a better feeling about themselves when they eat things like that. But it's one of those things, if you can find something else to replace that sugar with something completely different, that's something I would definitely want to do. But Insulin is the way that we get our blood sugar down. It does not belong in the bloodstream, because if it's in the bloodstream, it becomes extremely not good for your vascular system, and then it goes into the cells to make ATP. But unfortunately, it's also ways that we store fat too. So like I was alluding to earlier, all fat gain and weight loss is hormonal. So if your insulin's always high, guess what? You're not going to be losing weight very easily at all. Your insulin is very low, and your blood sugar stays, your blood glucose is at a regular level or a very optimized level. You're able to burn fat pretty well, because your insulin is not telling the cells to store things as fat and store things as energy. So that's why we talk about the diet and the types of foods you're eating, so we can decrease the amount of sugar intake and alcohol intake and things like that to spike the insulin. And you'll see that when you start to drink alcohol, you'll start to kind of feel like this, to me, I feel like a pressure in my body. Your blood pressure goes up. The insulin is extremely spiked with that, and you're storing it. You drink a little bit, and then your front part of your brain shuts off, and you just start to, oh, that looks good, and that looks good, and this plant looks great. Oh, that chocolate cake, that looks great. Before you know it, you're 2,000, 3,000 calories in, and all that's going to probably getting stored, a lot of it's fat. And then there's also the inflammation piece, that you're doing all the damage to the blood vessels. So.
Yeah, and also inflammation, like I said, I'll go into the stress inflammation deal. So, like, okay, we talk about sugar and insulin, right? But now what about which is still good, right? Like the insulin is protecting you from getting sugar on the cells, right?
No, insulin is what actually opens the cells to let the sugar in.
Oh, wow.
Correct. So it's almost like I like to use the lock and key analogy.
Okay.
And eventually, when you overload the system with too much insulin for a very long time, the key no longer fits.
Oh, wow.
So now the blood sugar stays 200, 300, 400, 600 sometimes of these folks.
Oh, wow.
Which then causes a whole host of metabolic issues, including sometimes acidosis, which is not very good at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not good.
And what does the insulin do with the carbs? Like when you eat good carbs, right?
Oh, I mean, well, there's several processes. First, you eat the carbs, and we have something called amylase, which is another enzyme that kind of breaks down starches and sugars. And that gets broken down to we can actually use it. And insulin just drives it into the cell.
Okay.
That's what it does.
Okay, so good carbs, guys. Good carbs.
Right. So when he says good carbs, he's talking like low glycemic carbs, like a sweet potato. There's a couple other low glycemic carbs you could eat, like your broccolis and things like that don't spike insulin so fast. Oatmeal is another one. Oatmeal that's regular oatmeal is not, but the flavored oatmeal is like your cinnamon sugar. It has the sugar, so now you got two different carbohydrates going at the same time. So foods that are just not as a little bit easier on the blood sugar, much better for the body itself.
All right, this is just a question. Of course, you're not a nutritionist, but let's see if there's, like, for example, rice.
Sure.
It's a carb.
Very simple.
It's a simple carb, but for me, it does not work, right? Because they say it's a fast, whatever.
Yes.
So, for example, if I go to bed, and also I think there's something with rice that doesn't do well for my skin, whatnot, right? So, if I eat a pound of rice on, let's say, okay, I'm just creating a position here. For dinner, I wake up hungry and no energy at all. If I eat a pound of potatoes, I wake up ready to go kill a bull. Why do you think is that? Is there a difference on carbs? Because you're talking about low glycemic. Is that why it's happening to me?
Well, sugar, again, very fast. And potato actually has a little bit of like fibers. It may slow that down just a little bit. But I mean, it's just a little bit slower acting, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, they still are very simple carbs. Rice is very simple. Potato has a little bit more that kind of slows things down.
Okay. But I still don't feel good with rice. All right, so let's go to a point that I think, in my opinion, messes it all up, right? You can eat well, you can do all that well, but I think there's something that's really terrible, which is stress, which now it's your brain. So we're talking about, like, I guess at this point, we're talking about how your liver works, how your body sends things, whatever, your kidneys. We're not going to go into who sends what there, right? Like for me, for example, like I said, I would rather, I would use a deodorant that maybe is not good for you, but it balances out because I live a good life. But I'm not going to be stressed about, putting something in my body or not using, a Lululemon pants. I think a couple of times you have asking about you're stressed, what's going on. So how does now the psychological part of it, right, of like worrying too much now, how does that can affect, because you're talking about like, oh, your brain sends a signal to your balls to make testosterone, but now if your brain is worried about bills and what you have to do to make meets end, that may also, like, let's say the liver and the brain are two entities that help you to deliver certain things, right? So how do you think the world today of people not practice mindfulness, not take time off the phones, dopamine spiking, let's talk a little bit more of like an emotional state of the optimization of your health, because I think is a big thing, mental health, so how do you think a stress, like over stressing, can affect, because I don't know, um, I'm just making a point of like, okay, I'm super good, but I was stressed. Guess what? If your testosterone high, you're too stressed, you're gonna beat up your wife, and things like this. I'm just making a point. So how do you feel? What do you think that stress will hinder someone's health optimization, even if they do something very good?
Wonderful question. Yeah, no, that's going to be your stress hormone called cortisol.
Cortisol.
Cortisol,
That was the
yes.
one I was trying
Cortisol,
to
yes. So you can
get
have
into
really
the.
high cortisol and you can have very low cortisol. So you want that to be, optimized. Cortisol is actually a really, really helpful hormone, especially early in the morning. It's when you're supposed to. It's kind of helps you wake up. It's part of your immune system. Everything, it works really well in your cortisol's fairly decent in the morning and then wanes off in the afternoon. So cortisol can cause like belly fat. It can cause weight gain. It can cause catabolism, like where you're just not be able to build muscle. You're not be able to feel the way you are. And it's also like it could also be neurohormonal, where you're always ruminating, like gotta pay these bills. I gotta be here. I gotta be here. I gotta be here. So you have not only your mind working one way, but you also have another a stress hormone working at the same time, causing, I don't know, anxiety, anger, depression, things like that. So
Mm.
how can you deal with that? One is going to say, I would say it again. Magnesium's a great one to kind of help calm things down. Number one. Number two, probably have a plan on, like, plan for the next day to decrease some cortisol or decrease some stress. Is always be ready so you don't have to get ready. That's I literally live by that, because I'm a high stress individual. You can ask my wife, which our 20th anniversary today, she will tell you I'm a high stress individual. There was two ways to get here today: freeway, back roads. I chose a back roads. Took me 7 minutes longer, but the stress is less. I don't have to stress about freeways. I don't have to worry about trucks. I don't have to worry. So if you can decrease the amount of stress, like the better off you're going to be. There's a couple other things you could do to decrease that cortisol, and or get to where the cortisol is more optimized. That's more working out in the morning, getting around sunlight first thing in the morning, and maybe kind of like, not stressing the body out terribly really late at night. Right. That's what you kind of don't want your cortisol to be extremely high at night. Kind of want that more in the morning and let it kind of peter off during the day, and that's the normal. So when we test for cortisol, we kind of just get a test in the morning. We do your first AM cortisol, kind of see where it's at, see if it's in an optimal level, and make sure that you're right where you're at. And they talk to you about if you're super stressed or things like that, we may actually add a second afternoon, and if it's really bad, we'll add an evening cortisol to see if there's a decrescendo of your lab levels there, and then we'll make an individualized plan for you after that. If you have an extremely low cortisol levels, we'll ask you about what your stress is. You may have just completely blasted out your adrenals, and then from there we can come up with glandulars or things like that to kind of help bring cortisol back into your body to actually feel really, really well. So high cortisol, you feel terrible. Low cortisol, you also feel terrible.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So like everything in life is
It's a balance.
find a balance and putting
sure.
the team together, right?
Yes.
Like when you form a team, right? Like it has to be balanced,
Right.
like the strengths of one is the weakness of another. As we say, the you're only as strong as the weakest link.
Correct.
And it's very important for us. So now let's go into more of like what the world does it, right? What would it take for you? Like what's like, because we're talking about being efficient, right? Just like jiu-jitsu, I think hoot HRT is about being efficient first, right? You can't just like, oh, you have all those numbers, because I probably get a lot of clients. Well, but my testosterone low, I want my testosterone high. I'm like, hey, calm down. Let's optimize everything else first. Let's hip escape. Let's front row, back row. Let's get in the survival first, and then we learn how to, escape a position, and then we can teach you how to sweep, right? Because of course, like I like to relate with people that align with the ways I think, right? I could have go like, hey Joe, I have a competition, I want to be bombado as fast as bombado means juiced up.
Yeah,
As fast as possible. That's not the case, right? Because like I said, I'm still decently um, going. So what's the moment that in your case you will decide to put someone in some sort of what's the case that's like, okay, now it's impossible for this person?
sure.
What are the levels, or what's the case that for you in your practice was, okay, now there's no way I can change this guy around, and now we have to put um, you know testosterone replacement for you?
Sure. So I love that question because it's always different. It's personalized. It's on a one-on-one basis. There's no it's 300 or 350. It's literally purely based on your lifestyle. It depends on what type of rest you're getting. Depends on what type of foods that you're eating and what you're doing for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing so, I'll just take you for instance. You come to my practice. I know you, and I know what you do. I know how you eat and drink. Your testosterone is 350, and you were like telling me I have libido issues. I have brain fog. I have none of these. I would then try to optimize you as much as possible and see if we can get things going first
Mm-hmm.
before placing you on. If it's 350 and your LH and your FSH are really high, that's telling me that the brain is signaling to the testicles, hey, make testosterone. I would then look to see, what is your vitamin D? What is your DHEA? Oh, they're also within an optimized range. Hey, Shanji, unfortunately, it looks like you're having primary failure. Your testicles are just not making testosterone.
Okay.
Your brain is screaming at them, and they're just not making it. Then I would go over some, risk and benefits of, hormone optimization or testosterone replacement therapy, and we would discuss that on our visit, and then I would offer, testosterone therapy to you. Now, I've had patients come to my clinic with a testosterone of 565, and I'm like, all right, well, I mean, things are going fairly well, but his cortisol was through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, okay, hey, let's get this cortisol down with, like, we'll do some oxytocin in the morning. We'll do some zinc. We'll do a little bit of magnesium. We'll try to decrease the amount of stress, and we'll recheck you in 8 weeks. Well, fortunately for him, that actually worked out. So we didn't have to put him on, anything like that whatsoever. So it's all individually based. Like, we don't have a level.
Mm-hmm.
I try to do my best for the patient, and if it's not going to work out that way, then we'll talk about placing them on testosterone.
Mm.
And usually I'll catch back up with people that we did that with, and sometimes they're not doing it as well, and sometimes they do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no real cutoff. It's
Mhm.
really it's based on the individual, especially their age too. If they're
Mhm.
32 years old, I'm like, there's got to be a reason for this. Like,
Mhm.
let's figure that out first. Versus a 54-year-old male with a high follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone with primary failure, it's probably not going to come back. So
Yeah, the reason
no matter what I do.
the reason I'm saying that, because definitely in jiu-jitsu we're seeing like a short-term win versus a long-term, like I said, longevity,
Yeah.
right? Like I said, I'm very proud of myself that CC, like the reason that I have never, let me put testosterone in my body, I've self done that, and my blood pressure went to the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember for this one tournament, had money. I was already, late 20s, and I put it on, and then I was training. I was like, why am I being choked so fast? And I felt sluggish, and I felt everything, and I went off right away, right? So, um, what do you think for a young person that does not need that,
Mm-hmm.
and they think that they're taking this, they're gonna get an edge, but they're gonna lose their future, right? Are they gonna get that? What's the process of someone like, hey, you fucked that up, you did this too early, now you actually clinically need it?
Right. So, I mean, if they're 29 years old, they probably just suppress their testosterone production with exogenous testosterone, like bringing a large load of testosterone. And if you're not really knowing what you're doing, you got to understand, like, there's going to be some conversion to estrogen, which is going to make weight gain,
Mhm.
water weight, blood pressure. It's
Mhm.
going to cause some fatigue. It's probably going to cause a little bit of, like, maybe some moodiness and gynecomastia. So if you're not if you're not, like, well supervised with this can turn out not to be great. So if that person was to do that and then suppress their testicular function, I would then I would probably talk to them, make sure they're still not on it. And then I would look at just the whole entire process. How do we make testosterone? What is needed to make testosterone? And then I would try to supplement that or prescribe medications to restart that hypopituitary testicular axis, to tell the brain to tell the testicles then make the testosterone again. That's what I would do for that person. I wouldn't, I think if I'm answering your question correctly, he may not have messed it up completely. I would just try to put him back where he was before he started testosterone replacement therapy.
But like I said, my question is, where would it be a threshold like that's irreversible? Is there a point? Is there like a clinical way to find out because someone has done that for so many years that now
100%. No, right. So now I get it. So they're 29, now they're like in their 40s, right?
Yeah, I'm saying, let's say, okay, I mentioned 29 because I'm just mentioning when I did one time, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this, and I self-medicated, of course, but I still didn't have the proper following. I just did it because I thought I needed it. So I'm just say a 20-year-old boy, a 19-year-old boy, because I can definitely see in my field some kids are like, you should not look like this, but they do. Where clinically, if you can explain to us, where is clinically you can say the same thing like you were talking about my cholesterol? Okay, this is genetic. There's nothing you can do about it. We need to put you in some sort of medication, whatnot. Like the other ones are a way we can kind of push it. We can go to lifestyle, but then I'll have to go 0 sugar, 0 alcohol, which I'm not doing it. Shit, I gotta say that in front of my doctor. But so how does one find out? Okay, I'm clinically unable to produce this. Otherwise, you can have kids, libido, like athletic function.
Yeah, I would be able to tell that by their follicle stimulating hormone, which is responsible for making sperm, then your luteinizing hormone, which is responsible for making your testosterone. If those levels are extremely high, and that's like the brain saying, hey, we need testosterone, and then the testicles take that signal, make testosterone, and the testosterone is out in the system. What actually shuts the testosterone off is that conversion to estrogen. The estrogen goes back to the brain and says, hey, we're all good to go. We don't need to make a whole lot more. So I would be looking at his FSH, LH, as well as his testosterone, his as well as his estrogen. And there's another one that we didn't really talk about at all, but prolactin, right? So this could be something called a prolactinoma, which is a growth near the pituitary gland that kind of shuts is a mass effect and kind of shuts off the function of the pituitary. There's usually a lot more things going on, but sometimes you'll find out it's low testosterone, libido issues, erectile dysfunction issues, anxiety, things like that. So that's also another lab that we test for because we're looking for a primary reason. But that's how I would do it. I would look for what is your brain telling the testicles, what are the testicles doing, what are the other hormones that will suppress your testosterone production. We look at the entire picture from front to back. And if that person is FSH is high, LH is high, their prolactin is normal, then that's probably a primary failure. If his prolactin's high and his LH is high and it's not working, then it's probably a prolactinoma, which then needs to be seen by endocrinologists to be placed on a really powerful medication to kind of shrink that tumor. Right. So these are, exactly. And then we're looking at, what is the DHEA? What is your cortisol? The cortisol really high, then we need to try to work on bringing that down so it's not suppressing. And then what is your thyroid? Believe it or not, your thyroid is almost like the maestro of the orchestra. It's pretty much runs a whole lot of like your metabolism, as far as like heat and cold, constipation, hair, like it does a lot. So we're looking at everything, and it's not a real solid answer like this. It's like we're looking at, there's so many pieces to
it's basically over time.
But if the person told me, hey, I took testosterone replacement with testosterone for 40 years and I just got married to this lady and I want to try to have kids now, what I got to try to do my very best is to restart the whole entire testicles back to function. And what we do with that is either use something called enclomiphene, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator. So we go basically blocks the brain from like any estrogen and it pumps out more LH and FSH. And we try to almost like jumpstart basically, if you really want to think about the testicles. But we also want to make sure that we supplement the body and what it needs to make the testosterone. It's like making cookies, like chocolate chip cookies without chocolate chips. Well, hell, you make cookies, but they're not chocolate chip cookies. They're not raised because you didn't put any baking powder in there. So they're not raising. So you have to put all the ingredients in there at the same time, plus the heat or the signal to make testosterone in the testicles.
So, like I said, like it's good for me because every time I bring my friends, it's also me making questions that I'm confused. So, having a high testosterone,
Yeah.
right? What does that relate with the production of sperm? Like, what's the relation, right? Because, for example, if you have a natural high testosterone, I would say
Yeah.
you have enough,
You're going to
little boys there.
typically.
Yeah, that's my kind of my question, my curiosity, I would say. But now, if you have a high testosterone, because you're injecting that, now you're shutting those bad
Because
boys
you
down.
you shut off LH and you also shut off FSH.
Okay.
So follicle stimulating hormone in women actually stimulate the follicle to be fertilized. In men, it makes the sperm.
Okay.
So you can have a high testosterone, but if your swimmers don't swim very well, and there's something wrong with your swimmers, I don't care if you have a testosterone of a 1200, you're normal, your sperm's not going to do what it needs to do. But if you have a high testosterone naturally, you have a clear signal from the brain and the testicles to make what it needs to make. Now, that's just in the testosterone realm. I'm not really so much of an expert on the FSH making the sperm. I just know that's responsible for it. But you can have all kinds of genetic anomalies or swimmers that don't swim very well or whatever have you, because that has nothing to do with the testosterone numbers. But usually it clearly tells me you have a great LH and FSH going to the testicle and they're working the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, maybe we should talk to a fertilization company now, not hormonal optimization.
Right? No.
Yeah, because that's impressive, how like, I want to have kids, I got to get out of this. I'm like, well, but like, what's the relation with that? So there's always that little guy that does a specific job.
That's correct.
That just, I have that high testosterone, I make babies, I have a hard on the whole day, but that doesn't mean you can make kids.
That's correct. It also, well, too, I mean, you're only talking half of the equation. You're talking, you may have the ability, but your spouse may not be able to ovulate. And so
we're talking about
our own hormonal issues.
Yeah, we're talking about like my end of the spectrum.
Right, but your probability of making children are pretty high. Yeah.
All right, so still good. I'm still gonna make a little baby. So Joe, like now let's talk a little bit about how people find you. Like what's your, because I remember, of course, the medical field, there's like a whole like, okay, I can treat people in certain states and things like that. Right. So how do people, of course I'm gonna put the website down here, you guys can follow it, the Instagram and everything, but just tell us like what does it look like to work under you, how they can find you.
Sure. Yeah, so we just to start off, we are a cash-based business. We are physician led by Dr. John Cash. He's the one that writes all of the medical direction of the clinic. We're also, evidence-based. There's no bro science here. We're definitely doing, as a medical clinic, we're not a testosterone mill. I'm not looking for high numbers, high output. I'm looking for people that want to best optimize their hormones as well as their health. And that's what we want to do. So we're licensed in Texas. We're also licensed in Louisiana. We're a telehealth company. So you can see us, you can talk to us in your car. You could have Shanju's in his telehealth visit here in his dojo here. You can do this from your couch. Like, it's very simple. There's no driving into a clinic for 30 minutes in traffic and sitting there for another half hour and an hour and a half wasted every day. We're very easy. It's very easy to work with us. There's only two of us, myself and Dr. Cash. You'll find us at Hoot, HRT, which is this here. And I have to really explain what this means, right? So this is just two different acronyms. So it's Hormone Optimization of Texas, Hormone Replacement Therapy.com. And there's an owl here for wisdom, as well as it's a marketing thing. As it's Hoot, you can remember the Hoot and the owl. The owl has nothing to do with your hormones whatsoever, but it's more of a visual kind of thing, and it's also easier to put into a search bar. So I really wanted to put that out because I didn't want anybody to have questions. What is Hoot? I know you're in Texas, and I understand, right? So no, that's what that means. And then you can sign up for your initial consultation. I'm gonna tell you the prices right now, so there's no big guesses to let you know. So your initial lab panel will be $300 in cash, and it's pretty simple. You'll go to my website, you'll sign up for initial consultation. You're more than welcome to peruse it to kind of find out what services we use. There's a couple of pictures and people that we already are kind of treating and kind of seeing. You can review some of our reviews from our patients. Sign up for initial consultation. I receive the consultation announcement I reach out to you. Well, actually, I just send you forms for you to fill out, like photo release forms, your intake, credit card information, stuff like that. Once that's done, you set up an appointment with me to speak, via telehealth, and we talk about your symptoms. And then afterwards, we start a lab panel, and that lab, again, that's $300. That's 12 different labs. So I don't want to sound very internet-like, but it's well over 70 different biomarkers, if you will, looking for a reason for your fatigue, reason for your brain fog, reason for your hormones to be the way that they are. And you may or may not even have a hormonal issue, and we look at that. If you have a family history of early cardiac death, say like you had a mother or father have severe heart disease in their 40s or 50s, we kind of want to know this, so we can kind of search a little more for this lipoprotein little a and lipoprotein B. This is not something we routinely do, but if your LDL levels are through the roof, we typically will request to do those, and it'll be an additional cost, to be honest with you. It won't be part of the initial ones. And then afterwards, I get your lab results back, and then I go through all of your intake forms. I take your lab results, then I compile this report, and I send this to your report, and I say, what is apolipoprotein B? What is it in the body? Why is it bad? What are we going to do to fix it? Those kind of things. So I send you a very detailed report on what's going on, and then we reestablish via telehealth, and then we talk about your personalized hormone optimization. And for men, and females are completely different. There's 3 to 4 different hormones we have to mess with. But for men, it's $2,300 for the entire year. There's no more cost afterwards. It includes all of your telehealth visits. It includes all of your labs at 6 weeks, 6 months, and 1 year. All your supplies, all your shipping. And also, the other thing I really want to harp on is I will be texting you from one of my work phones. So if you ever have a question, you pick it up and text me, and I usually will answer within either instantly or within a couple of hours. So I'm also providing access for you to ask questions, or if you have any concerns, you reach out to me, not to an office, and then maybe the note gets to me, maybe I'll call you back. We typically don't do that. And then I just follow you, and we make appointments at 6 weeks, 6 months, and a year. So about 4 different visits. And like I was kind of alluding to earlier, your primary care manager will have a difficult time dealing with your hormone optimization in between all the other visits. And every one of our visits is 30 minutes long. So every time I'm on with you, it's 30 minutes. It's not 7 and we throw medication at you and you chase out the door. Nothing like that at all. And I'm not saying, all primary care managers do that, but I provide, I'm offering a lot of service for your hard-earned money to pay for these services. So you're getting a lot out of this, as far as expertise, access, as well as evidence-based medicine, stuff like that. So
it's literally like you gotta keep following up. It's not just like, hey, this is what you do.
And you might just get a random text from me on Sundays because I'm going through all my patients. Well, I haven't spoken to them in a month. I just text you like, hey, how's everything going?
Yeah.
What's going on? Have you been taking the supplements? Anything to report? And it's just a quick yes or no.
Yeah.
And it just feels like there's somebody on your team. I'm part of your team.
Yeah, it's a team. Not an athlete, you know what I mean? I think we all, as humans, we're all athletes, I have Joe, I have my physiotherapist, I have my nutritionist, so we all work together.
Sure.
To make sure we can be 70 years old and do what we love, right?
And be 70 years old and still active. So when you say longevity, and Dr. Peter Tia says, and I listened to his book twice, and this is another reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, all besides the stuff I do in the emergency department, like you're gonna live to a certain point and you're just gonna die. But it all depends on how you live those 76 years on average. How are you going to live that? Are you going to live that decrepit? Are you going to live that obese? Are you going to live that sedentary? Are you going to live that with COPD? Are you going to live that with heart problems? How do you want to live that way? You need to make these decisions, unfortunately, in your early 30s to mid 30s to 40s, men and women. You've got to start doing this way earlier before you're in this 40-year-old time frame where things are starting to catch up, and now your hormones are diving down, your chances for type 2 diabetes are rising, your cholesterol is going down, and all the heart disease starts to creep in on you. You want to get ahead of this here instead of over here in my emergency department. You want to do this early. So like what I'm doing with you, I'm getting ahead of your cardiovascular disease risk early. At 43, I think it was when we started.
Yeah, 43.
Now you're 44, so we're getting ahead of those now. And the next thing I want to talk about, just really quickly, is we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, but we didn't really talk about the really quickly some of the benefits of like having your testosterone optimized if it needs to be, right? Not just because you want it to be, but because it needs to be. It has a lot of things to do with like fat breakdown. You lose weight. You can actually build muscle, and that's great for glucose disposal. That's where your sugar needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to stay in your bloodstream, but if it has the muscles use a lot of energy, so you're able to build that muscle. You're able to also dispose that glucose, to your type 2 diabetes risk is slightly decreased. Now, it's not the cure for type 2 diabetes. It's a way to kind of ward this off. And if you've been going to the gym for quite a long time, you're not really noticing a whole lot. You need to think, well, was I pushing myself too hard? Is my diet right? Or are my hormones off? And honestly, the only thing that you know is that your diet's right or you're training hard. It's my job to know if your hormones are incorrect. So once you start to go to the gym, you start to notice things are happening. Like it becomes, now you go from that sedentary lifestyle to like there's a reward for your workout now. There's that, oh my God, I see my bicep vein. I'm 50 years old. I'm finally now seeing a bicep, and I have abs for the first time in my life at 50 years old. That's the craziest thing. I really wish I'd have done this when I was in my 30s. I wish I knew this knowledge in my 30s, but this isn't something that the military was really pushing. As a matter of fact, we had another podcast we talked about that, but I was on Clomid for 6 years. It was the worst thing ever. I wasted 6 years of my life.
Oh.
I did not enjoy the testosterone going from 300 to 600. It was terrible. And another thing that, speaking of jiu-jitsu, what we also have to know about is like testosterone is not going to make, it's not liquid black belt. You're not going to come in here and pass this guy's guard. It's not going to happen. It's not going to make you better at jiu-jitsu. What it will wind up doing is eventually decreased cortisol, decreased stress. It's going to increase your sense of well-being. Like there's a lot of androgen receptors in the brain. It can somewhat help out anxiety and depression. It can absolutely help build muscle and kind of develop this self-esteem issue, not cockiness or arrogance, but like, oh, when I do things. And believe it or not, I really want to dispel this myth. A very high testosterone does not always make it where you're always uber aggressive. I'm here to tell you this now. I was a wreck, horrible human being at 300. I would blow the horn at people. I would yell at people in a grocery store. My testosterone is around 800 or so now, 900, and I don't freak out about anything anymore. I'm very calm. I literally thought that was going to be not that way, but I'm a lot more calm, a lot more collected. I can run a code in the ER and not stress at all. I could place a chest tube in somebody's shot in the chest and not be. It just happens. Like there's a great benefit from having your hormones optimized for men. And we barely even mention women here. Like, ladies, it is 2025. You don't have to do this anymore. Like, that Women's Health Initiative ruined it for a lot of people. A lot of your physicians out nowadays and your providers, your primary cares, don't want to prescribe you hormones. Birth control is not hormone replacement therapy. It is not. If you have a great OBGYN or you have a great, primary care manager that will help you with your hormones, please do. If they don't, please look me up. I'm absolutely certified. It's backed up by the Menopause Society. I would love to help you out. It's the craziest thing. If you listen to Brigham Bueller a lot, if you go back to Joe Rogan's podcast, he talks about the insurance industry. They don't do any of this preventive stuff. They're going to wait till you have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and a stroke before they actually really truly do something about it.
And then they throw a shitload of pills on you.
That's correct. But it's up to you to make sure that your diet and your exercise and stuff like that is up to date. And then also you may have to make an investment. And with me, you're making an investment in your health. You're going to invest in yourself, and you're going to almost walk over all these chronic problems hopefully I'm going to help you try to walk over all these chronic problems and sneak past the emergency department on your way to a long life. Right? So I want to make sure that you understand the longevity piece and how you're going to live up to 76. It's going to be up to you. It's not going to be up to your doctor. It's not going to be up to anyone else. It's going to be up to you, and making sure that you invest in yourself and take care of yourself at an early age.
Well, I'm glad I'm seeing Joe on a phone call, in personally, not looking up into a room where he's opening my heart.
Yeah, man.
So
that's good.
That's what we don't want to do. So since he already said that, maybe we come back to another chapter. If you guys want to put in the comments, we talk about the women part of it. Of course, that was more a little bit about my questions about my health, and I shared a little bit with you guys my issues that I had, and that made me, of course, I have my daughter. She's the one now, so we work with her, and I want to start her early. Of course, we can go the whole rabbit hole about the school system food and whatnot. Oh yeah, eat the cookies and you'll be good, right? So, Joe, thank you so much. Like I
Yes, thank you.
really loved it. Really, it really cleared my mind on a lot of things that I read, but I don't, and then I get to learn so much. Like I said, guys, I'm so happy, that I get to, he saw me here. I trained for 60 minutes
Yeah.
with young men, of course. Testosterone is not jiu-jitsu black belt. I have a real black belt, but definitely if it ever happen, I'll be 100% safe and sure that I'm doing the right thing. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Joe. And next time let's talk about the ladies. They
Yeah,
need some
absolutely.
help too. Thank you so much. Until next.
Thank you. See ya.